Aloha, my name's Anna Covert, and I'm coming to you from my battleship here on the beautiful island of Oahu. This week on the Covert Code, the topic is innovation and scaling startups. And my special guest is Marcelo Calbucci, and founder and author of PRFAQ Framework. There were 20 years in product development, innovation, and scaling businesses. He's a true technology expert and here to share valuable insights on addressing customer pain points and scaling for growth. Thanks so much for being here, Marcello.
Thank you for having me, Anna.
So, to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and experience in product development and just how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I was born in Brazil and I got into software and computers very early on when I was a teenager. So I went to college to study computer science. Shortly after that, Microsoft hired me and moved me to the US to work there. So I spent 7 years at Microsoft. Then I decided to become an entrepreneur, left, spent 18 years founding and working in many startups and startup studios. Then I joined the biggest startup of them all, Amazon,
Oh, wow.
which is the opposite of a small company. They have more than 1.5 million employees. I spent a couple years there. When I left Amazon, I decided to write a book about how Amazon does innovation, which I was fascinated. And I think a lot of people can benefit from that as well, using the PRFAQ framework, like I mentioned.
Wow. That's exciting. So, what is the PR FAQ framework?
Yeah, PRFAQ stands for Press Release and Frequently Asked Questions. Although it has press release in the name, it's not a marketing tool, it's an innovation tool. And it's a framework for people to discover, debate, and decide on a vision and a strategy for a new product, a program, a business, or even a process within an organization. And the way it works is you think about the outcome that you want to have, and you paint a picture as if it already existed. So you're almost visualizing it in a press release, like today we are launching this product, even though you're not launching anything, but you're setting the tone for your team to understand the direction that you're going.
Wow. So, you're manifesting it. I love that.
Yes.
Yes. And then, so then the tool is going to help you figure out a roadmap for success. Is that the framework under which it works?
It's more about strategy, right? So is to understand what is the viability of this idea, what is the feasibility. So understanding what problem are we trying to solve, who is the customer, how they are solving this problem today. Is it urgent? Is it important? And what is our solution? How is our solution different than other solutions? So that's what you include in the PRFAQ. So it's a tool that you use before you start a project, right? It's a tool that you use to decide if you want to start a project. So you evaluate, all the possibilities early on. It doesn't take a lot of time, maybe a week or two, to make sure you're not like getting into, deep trouble 6 months down the road.
Wow, and do you have an example of a, a product that maybe you thought was gonna be a big hit, and you used this approach and realized that, oh, there's a competitor or some supply chain shortage or, is there a, a kind of a concept you could provide?
Yes. So early in the year, I was approached by a few investors here in Seattle, and they wanted to create a new accelerator program for startups here. So, I do what I do. So I wrote a PRFAQ about it. So, the customers for an accelerator program are founders. So what I did is, as I was writing this PRFAQ, I realized that I need to talk with a few founders to understand the problem, what they need, and everything else. And as I talked with a bunch of founders, I realized, wait a second, they don't have the problem that we thought they had. So if we come up with this solution into the market, we're probably not going to be successful because that's not what the market is asking for.
Interesting. Interesting. So so this book that you wrote, is this who's the target audience? Is it any business? Can anyone do this themselves, or do they need any special skills?
Yeah, the more broader audience are innovators. Like, so anyone that's going to create something new or change something that exists. And in that category, I include founders, product managers, project leaders, researchers, business students even who need to pitch something at their university.
Wow. And is there any like, code or is it, requirements to be able to use this or just have to have an imagination and and you can use your fingers to type it out?
Yeah, you use your fingers, but the framework is very structured, right? So there is a document template that you use that template. There is a very specific way that you write the sentences and the paragraphs to bring the right balance of data and storytelling. And then there is a very specific method that you use to review the document with your peers and your teams and the people that are going to be working on this project.
That sounds very interesting. So I'm guessing there's an AI backend to this framework.
You can use AI if you want. Yeah, I caution people about how they use AI, right? Because you're thinking about a strategy of something. AI is not very good at that. It's good at creating a coherent strategy, but it's not very good at creating strategy that is outside of the box, right? So that is better for a person to do. What AI is really good at is researching. So you can like ask for ideas or like ask for information about a customer or a problem, but also for reviewing your document. Maybe you write your document in Google Docs and you paste into the AI and ask it, hey, critique this for me.
Right. So this is kind of more like in marketing, what we do, we have we call brand foundations exercise. So when a client comes to us and they want, a website or logos, or we kind of go through a series of documents where we're finding out like what is their purpose, what is their vision, why now, like who makes the sale that we lose, or who loses the sale that we make with our.
Mhm.
So is it kind of like a SWOT analysis, but a more? Is it kind of similar to that they're going through
It
modules?
is. It is, yes. And I think there is quite a bit of overlap there, right? Like there is some stuff that on your brand analysis you're gonna have more of, and not on the PRFAQ and vice versa as well.
Oh, interesting. So, talk to me, how does this tool, are you using it multiple times for the same product as, the consumer base changes? Like, how often are you, recommend to go back to this process, or is it just for the beginning of the foundation of a product launch?
You usually write PRFAQ when you want to decide if you should pursue a project or not, right? You should pursue an opportunity or not. But throughout the execution of this opportunity, of this project, you might realize that things have changed. You discover something that you didn't know before, or the strategy you're going is wrong. So if there is a change in strategy and vision, then you probably should go back and rewrite the document, because this document is used by everyone to ensure they are going in the same direction, right? To ensure alignment. So you can imagine a new employee joining the company, the first thing you give them is like, hey, read this document. So at least you understand what we're doing here, right? So you
Right.
keep everyone like moving on the same direction.
We always call it, and we call the brand Bible, like on the same page, like literally everyone's on the same page, right? Because they have the same document, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. So talk to me about, how you use this tool to address pain points and then scale for growth.
Well, so one of the problems with like people that are doers, like founders, product managers, people that want to execute is like they jump to execution immediately, right? And the framework kind of pauses them for a minute and say like, let's think about this. Let's make sure that the problem is the problem that we understand. And as you fill out the framework, like on the book, I provide lots of examples of questions that you need to answer. You might realize, wait a second, I really don't understand this problem that well. I might need to talk with a customer. I might need to look at the market. I might need to do some research, some UX research, some brand research. So whatever kind of research you need to bring the information back, and then you continue writing the document, right? And what does that does is help you think critically about your idea. So it might shape the idea that you started with to something else,
Mhm.
right? Or you might even say like, hey, wait a second, this is not worth pursuing. Let's not waste 6 months, 12 months of our life on this, because the opportunity is not what we expected.
Right. Well, that's a very valuable process. I think you're right. Even thinking about myself and how many companies I have, it's easy to start a new company when you own an advertising agency because you could just pop up whatever you want. But it is important to take a stop and to really identify, why now and what is the passion you're going to put behind it and if it's really worth
Yeah.
it. And so I think,
Yeah. And you want your team involved on this as well. Like you want different angles to look at your idea and your approach. A lot of times we fall in love with ideas, so we just want to push them forward and like sell to people. But the PRFAQ, it's a process of collaborating with people that have different perspective. So the idea becomes better.
right. And when did you publish your book?
It was 2 months ago. So it's
Wow.
brand new.
So tell me about the launch. What did you do for the launch and how are you marketing it?
I'm learning. It's my first book, so I didn't know much about book publishing, and I'm learning what to do. So that's why I'm here talking with you, learning about podcast marketing, working with newsletter writers and some content creators, so I can produce some content for people to understand how to use it, when to use it, and to learn about the framework as well.
Right. So is it available on Amazon, I'm guessing? And where are you distributing your book?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon. Usually I tell people to go to my website because then they can find which countries, it's available for them or not. They can also buy online on the website. And people can go to Google and search for PRFAQ book. And that's going to be the #1 result there. So
So
they
is it
can
Spanish and English?
just English.
Just English. Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, so tell me, like, what do you think is some of the most important advice that you can give entrepreneurs just starting out in product innovation?
Yeah. The most important thing is fall in love with the problem.
Mm.
Right? We often fall in love with the solution, but the problem is the most important thing. If you really understand your customers, and their problems, like you are much better positioned to create something that addresses that problem, right? Often what we have is the opposite. You come up with a solution and then try to fit into, a customer's problem, and it doesn't work that well.
No, you're right. And, I was reading one of my books I'm reading right now is called Yes. It's a behavioral science book, and I also love
Yeah, I love the book.
yeah, it's a great book, and they talk about the loss aversion and how powerful it is, and really that if you're trying to sell just based off your benefits, then a lot of the customers don't get it. They don't because they're more motivated by fear of loss than of the gain.
Hmm.
So I think that that's kind of a good way to spin it, right? That if you fall in love with the problem, that's kind of like why someone using a loss aversion tactic is really gonna be gravitating toward what you're selling.
Yeah, that's one way. The other thing that is important as well is like market change, new competitors come, the problem of the customer evolves. So you need to know how to evolve your offering, whatever, if it is a product or a service or even a podcast, to what the customer want.
Yeah, how do you recommend like that feedback loop occurring? Because this sounds like this tool is really to launch a product, but then what are the techniques you're recommending for making sure that it's still current, right? If they, is it surveys or is there any other tools you're recommending?
Well, the best way is really observing what customers are doing, right? And understanding how they're using your product or how they're benefiting from your product. And if you have a technology product, you can have analytics that look at what pages, what buttons, what things they did on the product. If you have other types of products, you might collect the data as you actually physically observe them using your product in a store or something like that. Surveys are very valuable. But nothing really beats talking to customers, right? So you should every week or every 2 weeks, like pull a group of 3, 4 customers and ask them, like, why did you use it? What do you like it? What you didn't like it? It's not a single customer that's going to give you the insight that you need, but a collection of customers providing you feedback is going to really open your mind for other problems and how to expand your product as well.
It's really, I really love what you said there. I had another guest on, I got to figure out which guest it was, but he talked about website optimization and just by simply adding one question at the end of the shopping cart, how they are able to address and scale businesses so much. And that is after someone purchases, they ask one question, what almost made you not purchase?
Mm,
So then it's like, oh, well, and a lot of times
interesting.
immediately that, the video was blocking. If you ever try to, like my mother, she'll call me and be like, will click on an ad and want to buy some skincare. And there's a video and she can't even get through the video to buy it. Right. That's
Mm,
a mobile issue, right? They didn't think about mobile responsiveness on desktop. There's probably a button that says skip.
yeah.
But things like that are, and they start to see immediately a pattern evolve of what they couldn't find. They didn't know what the shipping was gonna be or
Mm.
the video's too long, and I think that, it's thinking about what is something simple that because everyone has different styles of communication and what's important to them, but can you really narrow it down so that the data is meaningful and impactful?
Yes, you can. Like I said, the more customers that you talk to, the more you're going to create this pattern to understand how your product is addressing their problem, and what are the gaps on your offering, right? So that's important as well. The other thing that is important to know is customers that move away from your product or service, they are very valuable, right? If you can get them to talk to you, where did you go? Why did you go there? Was it a pricing issue? Was it a feature issue? is a convenience issue, so that you can get a pulse of what you're doing and building.
Yeah. So now, how in terms of scaling businesses and growing businesses, what is your strategy for ongoing? You're continuing to go back to your loop of the PR FAQ framework, but is there any other tools that you're using to identify customer needs and solve them?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that you should put a lot of focus on your competitors, but you should understand what they are doing, right? Because often they also are doing research and interviewing customers. And once you see them offering something that you're not offering, it's not that you should copy them, but you should try to understand why did they do what they did, right? Why they included that in their product, and then do some research yourself to identify that opportunity and if it is worth including on your product. Sometimes it's just like the products diverge, right? And that's fine. They're going to serve one segment of the market and you're going to serve another segment of the market. Um, as long as your market is not saturated, right, and you can continue grow, that should be a fine strategy. If you're reaching saturation, either because the product offering or the geography or whatever segment you picked, then it's time for you to think about expanding.
Hmm, okay, makes sense. So what excites you the most about the future of product development? Where do you see the industry headed?
What excites me is there is a fundamental pieces that are not going to change, right? So like the idea of like focusing on problems and customers is not going to change. And I think a lot of people right now are too excited about AI and how fast they can build and launch products. And they can launch products that do not meet the needs of the customers. So that creates opportunities for the people that are paying attention, right? That are talking with the customers and doing their survey to do it much better and create value that lasts a long time.
So you're most excited about kind of seeing, like, going back to the basics, I guess, or seeing what the fall is going to be.
Yeah, like focusing on your customers has a job that they are trying to get done. Can you serve that need versus I have a cool technology and I hope they love it? That usually doesn't work, right?
It's true, especially as we become into more of like a crowded market, as you mentioned. Now we have global competitors. It's not local; it's global. And what else can you do? It's not just necessarily the product. It's more. It's the customer service. It's this feedback loop. It's the listening. It's being authentic. And how can your brand really? I think for me, I agree with you that AI, while useful and very exciting and necessary for the kind of
Hmm.
that I do for high end, how much data can a human really review? Well, not much, at the same level as a computer. But then it needs a human to make the decision on what it all means and is it actionable or not. But just being able to take the time away now from humans who used to have to do that and allow them to spend time on what we're talking about, which is really connecting with the human and finding out, what it is that how are they using this product,
Hmm.
and going deeper. I think that's kind of what I'm excited about for the future here a little bit with.
Yeah, and going back to what we were talking before, and the idea of like pausing for a minute, right? Even after you're doing a project, sometimes you need to pause again. Maybe it's an offsite. Maybe it's like 2 weeks that you're gonna say like let's rethink about the future. Like let's brainstorm again. Is this the direction that we would go? If we hire someone to be the new CEO of the company, would this person continue the direction that we are going? Right. So you need to challenge some of your assumptions and beliefs so you can keep innovating.
Absolutely. It makes me think about one of my other books that I love is The Flywheel, right? And that's like an Amazon, what they created is like the flywheel, right? Where
Hmm.
and that's when it can keep building and building and building, right? Because they wanted to create you know, the most robust framework and then they got lower prices. And then, I mean, it went around and around and around. But I often think just about my own clients. And when I wrote my first book, which I launched last year, I was talking about branding and giving examples on how to create websites that meet the customer journey. And
Hmm.
just even the case study that I did was with a client of mine, Mirasol, and reading the case study or reading our old brand foundations exercise from a couple years before, I realized I was like, wow, the Mirasol that we are today is not the one that a
Mhm.
lot of things were the same, but we had changed. Like the even the same leaders had changed some of the service offerings. The industry had changed, and so now as best practice, we're just going back or trying to at least go back to all of our clients and ask it, even if it's a short kind of recheck. Like let's reread the document and see if it's who we are today, or if it needs to be modified a little bit. That's why I kind of was wondering if you go back to the same PRFAQ and just do a check-in, or if you start a new one to kind of stay on pulse.
Yeah, the lifetime of a PRFQ is really like 6, 12, max 18 months. Like you don't want to write a PRFQ for the next 10 years
Right.
because it will be irrelevant, right? You need to be persistent in a strategy so you can prove if it works or not, but not stubborn. You have to have the flexibility to say, wait a second, like things have changed. Consumer behavior has changed. The needs of business have changed. The competitors in the markets have changed. So like we need to be flexible and like go back and like rethink.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks so much for being here today. That was very interesting. And I'll say to learn more about Marcello, you can visit calbucci.com. And you're on LinkedIn, of course. And then also you can purchase the book on Amazon. We will be adding to the Covert Code under resources a new section for all of our favorite Amazon products, including all the authors we have. So we'll be adding you there. But I really appreciate you being here. Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, if people want to check the book website as well, I recommend reading a few examples of PRFAQ. You can search for PRFAQ book on Google, go to the book website, click on examples, and you can read some PRFAQs there.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for being here today. And for all my listeners, please join me next week as I interview another industry expert and a topic to help you succeed on and offline. Aloha. I'll see you in the pixels.